This video is to describe how you might make a fairly simple animation for the web, something like a web banner. Remember, web banners can be incredibly annoying if they're too busy. Generally, they're very, very simple if they're animated so that they don't annoy people too much. We're actually going to construct it in Photoshop. And I'm showing you this one. This is fairly complex. There's quite a lot going on, but it's the same principles as this one, which is a little bit simpler, and again this one, which is even simpler. So if you just actually look at what's going on, you'll see there's a color change, you'll see there's text, and there are 3 images, and those 3 images just become a bit more complex in this one because they actually move on the screen. They drop into the screen and then they disappear. That third one has what appears to be flashing writing and a little bit of magic as the chocolate bars come in. So it's just a little bit more complex, but using the same principles. So the first thing that we want to do is to actually just look at the animation setup in Photoshop and try out with something very, very simple. So you can see we've got movement, we've got rotation, we've got transparency, and actually we've got styles in there as well, so it's a little bit more complex. To create an animation document in Photoshop, make yourself a banner size. So you might have to do a little bit of research. There is a link on eZone. I'm going to make mine 330 by 290. You need to decide whether you want a background color, and you certainly have to work in RGB because this is for the web, so you need the screen color. Make sure your setup is in pixels because we're actually making it the correct pixel ratio for any website. To get your timeline, go to Window, Timeline. You see it here on the bottom. Now I've closed off all the panels that I don't need. I just want to concentrate on layers and what's going on down in the timeline. There's a direct relationship. So first of all, I want to bring in the objects that I want to work with. Well, I'm just going to do a little dummy. So I'm going to use a shape, and I want to animate this green square, but of course it has to be on a separate layer. So make sure you make a fresh layer and then you generate an object that you want to work with. And now I can animate this. First I have to create a video timeline. So I click video timeline. That will generate a timeline of approximately 5 seconds. And the way it works is a number of frames. It's broken down into a number of frames per second. So at 1 second, it's traveling at 30 frames per second. At 1 second, we've gone through 30. Then it continues, and you can see there's 2 seconds here, 3 seconds here. So that would be 90 seconds here. So you need to decide how long you want your animation to be, and you can determine the end of that. So let's say I want to make a 3-second animation. You just simply hold on to the end of your animation, and this little object here determines the end of the animation. So wherever the last piece is, that will lie. Alright, so I was going to make that about 3. You can change how you see things, so I can stretch out the timeline so I can see it a bit better, and you can see there's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 frames now. This is just for your viewing purposes. It doesn't actually do anything to the timeline itself. It's just a visual. You can see we're running at 30 frames per second, and you can change that. You would change it here in the set timeline frame rate. So you are able to cut this down if it's necessary. I would suggest leave it for now at its default 30 frames per second. It's rather high for animation, but we'll just keep it at the default mechanism. That you can add audio to this. You can simply click on the plus button and you can navigate to an AIFF file or some kind of audio file. And once you've found it, click open and it will attach. But we really want to concentrate on just the visual side today. So what you have are a number of things. You have a playback system here. So this is play or stop. This jumps back to the beginning of the animation, so that's very, very useful. You have some scissors to cut with, a few effects here which I'll show you later. You have some effects that sit on the timeline themselves here, and you also have a set of ways you can interact with the animation here. So it's a little bit confusing initially. So I want to start by showing you the relationship between this timeline and what's going on up here. Just shut that down. If I name the layer, so I'm going to call it rectangle, then it will automatically update over here. I can cut the animation timeline. Let's say I wanted to have different things happening at different times. So what I can do is take the scissors, and when I click on the scissors, it will cut wherever this cursor is. So let's put it here. Check that you're on the correct layer. And automatically what it does is it creates a fresh timeline, fresh layer in the timeline, but it also duplicates up here. So really what's going on is we now have two layers. Let's say I do that a few times. Do a number of different things to each one. Well, then your timeline starts getting extensive. But what you can do is you can either, let's say for instance I've changed the size of these, and if I just simply play it, you're going to see they're going to flash on and off now. So it's a quick, cheap way to get a flashing square. And if I took a bit more time about it, then we'd have them equidistant and flashing probably faster. But this becomes crazy. You need to be able to have a way to group them. And you can either do it by pulling them together. So I can put them back on the same timeline, and you can see the previous one's gone. And it's gone into a video group. Another way we can do it is to just highlight all of these and click on the right hand drop down menu and say new group from clips. It's just like putting a folder. Remember, selecting the layers and making a new group from layers, only this is a video group. So you don't have to do this. This is just one way of working. You can put them into a group. You could have worked on them in individual timelines, or in fact, for some of the things that I'm going to do next, I didn't need to cut it up at all. It's just for the sake of you being able to view them separately. So move on to the next video for instruction on how to use the tools.